Yo guys, welcome back to another video. This is going to be the kind of middle of the set update tier list for the OP9 meta over here in Japan and Asia. And I already made a speculative predictive tier list for that, so go check it out if you haven't. But we're going to take a quick look at that, see what we're going to change and fit things to what the actual current meta is, because the first one that we did was kind of just all speculation, and now that we have data and we've seen, you know, we're like a couple good weeks into the format, we'll see where everything's at and maybe take a look at what we think the meta might change a little bit towards going into the end of OP9. But just gonna have some fun. Again, these are all just my thoughts and opinions, so please take everything with a grain of salt. But let me know if you have some questions, or like if I forget a leader, or like if you think I placed something so terribly that it just warrants a comment or whatever, like let me know. Please keep everything civil. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump in and let's get started. All right, so this is actually where we kind of left off with my predictive tier list, and definitely got quite a few things wrong. There were a few sleeper leaders like Red Purple Luffy that I just wasn't expecting to be as good as it ended up being. But actually I think I did pretty well with predicting some of, like, obviously Black Yellow Luffy is not the best deck in the format. I didn't really think it was going to be the best of the best, but I thought he might have been stronger just at the very beginning of the OP9 format. But I do want to give myself a nice little pat on the back, because a lot of people were just assuming Lucci was just going to fall off really hard, and I definitely didn't. I stuck to my guns saying that he was going to be tier 1, and wouldn't you know it, I'm pretty sure it's safe to call him probably about like tier 1.5 at this point, but we'll jump into it. Just want to show you kind of where we had everything. I'm gonna make some changes. Obviously I got a lot of stuff wrong, so that's there too, but let's jump over and take a look at the new fresh tier list. All right, so this is what we're working with now. I think it's probably best to just do this. We'll do it in order, but at first I'm gonna just get this out of the way and kind of put what I think is the very top here. So I still think Doffy is the best deck in format. He's had some contention with these two leaders here, where, you know, you'll see some tier lists right now that put Purple Luffy as like the best deck in format. And if you were paying attention at the very beginning of the format, you might have seen that there were a lot of tier lists kind of looking like this, with Shanks in front of Doffy. Just because these two leaders themselves have decent matchups into Doffy, and required Doffy to tech for at least one, or if not both of these. And that puts Doffy in a little bit worse position, because if they don't tech for these two leaders, then they lose these two matchups, you know, at least becomes like 50-50, which isn't good enough really to be like the best deck in the format. You know, if the other two best decks are like kind of giving you a 50-50 challenge, and if these other two decks defeat a lot of the other decks, then obviously, I know it sounds obvious, but like that's, you know, what puts you in the running for the best deck in format. But I just think that right now Doffy is just the best. I just think he's so consistent. The resources he gets, the ability for him to just be able to, like, okay, I'll tech this card or these two cards, and okay, now I have the matchup handled, is pretty ridiculous. But right now Pluffy is probably the second strongest, I would say, just in the very current meta. Like literally as I'm recording this past like week or so, Pluffy has seen a huge rise. And Shanks is still pretty strong, but I do think, as a lot of people predicted, he kind of fell off a little bit, just in obviously his usage and his strength. There is a strength of its own when tons of people are running a certain leader. As long as that leader is generically pretty strong, it actually creates this kind of like pseudo strength effect where like he may not actually be that strong, but because so many people are using him and he does have a decent matchup into Doflamingo, I think it kind of gave him this little bit of an extra boost. But then a little guy named Rob Lucci came along and said, hey, I can beat you. So yeah, get out of the way. Lucci, I don't think he can be up in tier 1, but I do think he deserves a spot up here in tier 1.5. So I think that's pretty safe to say. Nothing too crazy here, because he also beats this guy, which is Red Purple Luffy. At the beginning of the format, it was a lot of Shanks, a lot of Red Purple Luffys, and obviously like a lot of Doffy. Lucci was kind of just out for a minute. People were trying the new leaders. People who play Lucci were scared of this guy right here. But I do think as things changed, it kind of settled back into something like this, where we'll put Lucci here. Red Purple Luffy does do well against Shanks as well, but Purple Luffy can fight against Shanks, can fight against Red Purple Luffy, can fight against, I do think I'd have to talk to some people who are a little bit more knowledgeable on the matchup, but I do think Purple Luffy can hold his own against Lucci now with the Luffy Taro board spam that you can do. And with things like Gum Gum Giant, where if you didn't have the Gum Gum Giant event, Lucci might be able to out-resource you at the end of the day. But I think Pluffy, any Luffy that has purple, X-purple or mono purple, got an amazing event with the Gum Gum Giant. So just for now, I think we can keep this here. I do want to add one more. So right now, I think Bonnie is so strong into this meta. You've probably seen a lot of Bonnies popping up. I went 3-1 at my CS store preliminary the other day. Unfortunately, I only made top 5, so I didn't get the top 3 that I needed to get into the regional. But Bonnie beats Red Purple Luffy. Bonnie can beat Purple Luffy. I think it's if it's a really good Pluffy player, it's probably closer to 50-50, just depending if they high roll. If they high roll, it's 50-50. If they don't, I think it's slightly favored for Bonnie. And then right now, the Doffy matchup is probably just slightly unfavored for Bonnie. I've been testing it a lot and practicing with some friends recently too, and as long as you don't have any accidents in the beginning, middle of the game, then you can handle the end of the game, out-resource them, and just clutch it out. So I want to, honestly, if you just ask me, where Bonnie goes literally today or, as of this week, I would put her in tier 1. But I'm going to put her in tier 1.5 just because she doesn't have a good enough matchup into Doffy. I do think it's pretty 50-50 against Lucci. She beats Red Purple Luffy pretty easily as long as you run the 9-cost Shanks version. And I will say, I'll give it to Shanks that he has a slightly favored matchup into Bonnie. And especially, I think the control version that runs more of the film Shanks can just KO your 10-cost Doffys. And with, a building snake on the board, can KO your 9-cost Shanks. I do think if Shanks has the answers for the things that Bonnie plays out on tempo and then has the end game cards that he needs, you're favored against Bonnie. But it's a pretty fair matchup. So if you just look at that, being 50-50 or favored into essentially all of the other 5 best decks in the format, I think gives Bonnie an incredible position. I do think this can change. This can change. Bonnie will probably slide down at some point, similar to Shanks. Shanks has been sliding up and down, right? But just for me, personally, and I've had a ton of fun playing Bonnie. I've played her a bit, a little bit in 07, a bit towards the end of 08, and now in 09 she's basically been the main leader that I've been using. I've been getting better with her, enjoying the leader a lot more. The deck building varieties is so much fun, especially now that you don't have to worry about things like stage and red purple law. So shout out to all the Bonnie players out there. I'm with you guys, and if you're over here in Asia and you're looking for a good leader to bring to your Tempo Yosens, the SOAR preliminary qualifiers, think about Bonnie, because Bonnie has a decent matchup into Pluffy and decent enough into Doffy, and you can handle all these other guys. So enough talking about Bonnie. I think these are kind of the top dogs right now at the moment. So let's kind of move on into, oh, sorry, hold on. One more. We're gonna put Teach in here. Where does Teach go? This is hard. I'm sorry. This is a difficult one. I might put Teach right here. He's a weird one because you lose hard. You lose hard to Doffy. Pluffy, I've talked to some people and they say it can be difficult just because they just start spamming leader effect and you're not able to get the board swarm that you really want. But you are able to still build your board pretty quickly, and a very strong board at that. So if they're not able to answer things as you play them out. Bonnie, it's about a 50-50. I've been doing some practicing with this with friends lately, and that's kind of the conclusion we came to. Obviously, Teach is very good against Lucci and decent enough into some of these other matchups, but just loses hard to Doffy, which puts him in a weird spot. I think I'm gonna put him right here. I think this is probably fair. Maybe like this. Just at this current moment. No, I'm gonna do like this. Okay. No, sorry. He's going here. Just because he's lacks a little bit of consistency and loses really hard to the best deck in format at the moment, and I don't think has a good enough matchup into Pluffy to warrant him. If he smashed Pluffy and just had a difficult matchup into Doffy, I'd put him up here, but I can't. So I'm gonna put Teach here. This could be wrong. This one, the tier 1.5 order is going to be very hard. I'm sorry, it's very hard to kind of to correctly order this. So just take this 1.5 with a grain of salt and know that any of these slots could change per day, essentially, at this rate. Whitebeard, I think there's a list waiting to get cracked for him in OP9, just with Roger and being a 6k leader. I think he can have a good matchup into Doffy. It's just gonna take some time maybe. Rebecca, we'll put in the Spice Copium. Moria's weird in OP9. No one's really playing him that I've seen. So we'll put him in tier 3. Tier 3 is gonna just be like the kind of like the stragglers, the people that I'm not really sure about. Anel is in this weird spot where he is good into Doffy and you know, decent into some of these other matchups, but loses to a ton of them as well. Like loses to Pluffy. Bonnie can handle Anel pretty well. Loses to Lucci. Loses to Shanks pretty much too, especially if they run the film Shanks. Obviously Teach destroys Anel. So like, yeah, just too many bad matchups, but people have been cooking, and he's even been winning some of the like the CS Tour prelim qualifiers and stuff. So definitely a sleeper pick, but just has too many bad matchups up at the top to put him up there. And it's not gonna lie, it's been kind of nice not having that many Anel around. I am not gonna lie, it's been kind of nice. Lucci is really strong, but you don't see too many. It kind of depends on the day for Lucci, but Anel you just don't see as much anymore, and it's nice. But he is popping back up a little bit, which is you know, take it how you want. Katakuri, kind of a sleeper pick. Vegapunk. All right, I do this every time with Vegapunk. I'm telling you guys, Vegapunk is awesome. On paper, he's probably 1.5, but I just think in practicality, if you like just look at everything and how difficult he is to properly pilot, and the fact that I do think now, like, he has a favored matchup into Doffy. I think he struggles against Bonnie quite a bit. Lucci is about 50-50. Red Purple Luffy can be a little hard too. A lot of like nearly 50-50 or slightly unfavored matchups. Pluffy, I don't know the matchup well enough to actually speak on that too much because I haven't been playing Vegapunk as much in the past week or two. But he just has a few too many like slightly unfavored, and I think for Vegapunk to be very viable, he needs to have more like multiple completely favored matchups that you can just practice and get better at, and then just, you know, hope you don't make too many mistakes when you take him to like a bigger tournament or something, right? He's a hard leader, really fun leader, rewarding but punishing. That's what I always say. That's what I'll probably always keep saying. Perona, I think sleeper hit against Doffy, kind of good, but I think she just struggles against some of the other leaders, and is one that I think is a little bit unexplored still in OP9. I do see people posting lists and, you know, saying some good things that she can handle Doffy and stuff like that, but I think she has like a hard time against like Lucci and Pluffy and some of these other leaders that can kind of outpace her. So I think she's going to be in tier 3 for now. Yamato, man, you guys know I love Yamato. You know I love Yamato. But Yamato's in a really bad spot right now, just because I think too many of the top leaders are hard matchups for Yamato. Like Blue Doffy is like so hard. It's so bad, especially if you're running Sky Aggro. It's just nearly impossible. If it's a good Pluffy player and they know like when to time and put up their blockers and when to counter out and everything, I think this is either 50-50 or slightly favored for Pluffy. And just this being nearly impossible, and this being at best, in the best case scenario, slightly favored for Yamato, I don't think it's good enough. Bonnie's a hard matchup. Lucci's about 50-50. Red Purple Luffy just comes down to how much Gum Gum Giants and counter they have. Shanks is probably slightly favored, Shanks. And then Teach, I think Yamato is slightly favored. But, I mean, just looking at that, like, it's not good. It's not good. So, Yamato's going into the kind of like the, sorry, you're just not good enough right now tier list. That's what this tier 3 is. Bella Betty, on the other hand, we're going to put her up at tier 2. She's killing it. I don't know if she's won any flagships yet in this current meta, but she's won a ton of the store prelims, which at the moment holds more value and is probably more important to like seeing what the meta is, because when the store prelims qualifiers are happening, those are more important than flagships for people who really want to get into the regionals. The system is weird over here in Japan, and it's very cutthroat. And if you see Bella Betty's winning it and stuff, she just has a good matchup into some of these leaders where, like, if she high rolls, she can beat almost anyone. And right now that's good enough. Decent enough matchup, like probably just slightly unfavored against Doffy. but can outpace a lot of these other top leaders up here. Black Yellow Luffy is kind of creeping back up. I think we can kind of put him here, where obviously a bad matchup against like Teach, but decent matchup against Blue Doffy. Black Yellow Luffy, once you awaken and become like a 9k leader and stuff, the current like OP9 Doffy lists all are very low to the ground and just swarm and just aggro because they can't really afford to run too many tech cards. They're not running a ton of gravity blades anymore, if at all, but in general, the kind of just like average Doffy list is going to lose to a Black Yellow Luffy player who doesn't just like crazily brick or something. So that's good. Decent enough matchups. Obviously destroys Lucci, and I still think Bonnie beats Black Yellow Luffy. Shanks seems like it's more of like a 50-50 matchup. Kind of just depends on who draws their key cards better. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in tier 1.5. Reiju, I think, is just not performing in the East. Gonna go tier 3. Some of these I'm just gonna run through. Dragon, I think, is like worse Bello Betty, but a 5-life leader, which gives him a lot of merit and kind of just gives him this like Spice Copium level. Kalgara is just gonna go here. Blue Yellow Ace, I think, would be towards the top of the Spice Copium. I have a friend who got top 3 at a store prelim qualifier with Blue Yellow Ace, and he just has a decent matchup against Blue Doffy if you can get leader effect off enough, you know, and can stand up to some of the other top leaders as well. So that's pretty good. Hancock, I think, is in a actually really decent spot because she can beat Doffy and Pluffy. It's not easy, but I would say they're at least like kind of 50-50. Some people will tell you that she's favored into Doffy, and I can kind of see it. I do think if you're playing a really, really good Doffy player, it's probably closer to 50-50. Pluffy, it kind of just depends on how much they can spread and then how many events you're seeing and what timing of those events, and it's a little complicated. Obviously you still lose to Lucci. You're gonna beat all the Bonnie players you see, and a lot of people are saying that you can beat Shanks as well, so that's pretty good. A decent matchup into Black Yellow Luffy. Not too sure about the Red Purple Luffy matchup, but just a good spread overall, so I think that warrants tier 2. Not sure if I could put her in tier 1.5, but tier 2 is good. Zoro, I think we're just gonna keep as like kind of a rogue deck right now. Nami, I'd put here. I think, again, just a good matchup into a lot. Like beats Shanks, beats Lucci, beats Nami, 50-50 maybe against Black Yellow Luffy, beats Red Purple Luffy. I think Pluffy and Doffy, obviously Doffy beats Nami most of the time, and people say that Teach is slightly favored against Nami as well, just because of the 10 cost Blackbeard and just being able to use leader effect and stuff to stop them from getting on plays like Kaya, because Blackbeard probably gonna have quite a bit of resources in that matchup because they're not using anything to counter out as much. But yeah, Red Ace, I think. No, we can go into Spice Copium just because too hard of a matchup against stuff like Blue Doffy, and even like Pluffy can be pretty hard. He does well against Black and certain other leaders, but yeah, just not enough of the decks that he's good against in the meta right now for him to be anything more than just Spice Copium at the moment. Pudding will go down there too. Red Green Law. You know, some of these leaders are having some showings, but they're not really that good. Buggy, I'll put in just tier 3 for now. But when the new 7-cost Buggy comes out, I think he goes up to tier 2. I think he goes up to tier 2. I'm going to put Teach here, actually. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. He's decent, but he has a lot of flaws. He has a lot of weaknesses. And I think until he gets that 7-cost Buggy promo that's coming out, I don't think he has just enough. Black Purple Luffy is going to go into tier 2. He is a leader that has struggled at the start of OP9, but is finally getting some showings, and people are playing him more. They're cooking with him more. I think they're getting better lists, and he's just showing out better overall. Robin, unfortunately, I had higher hopes for her, but I think she's just in the Spice Copium. Still a cool leader. I love this leader. It's fun playing her, but yeah, sorry. Red Purple Uta, same. Lim, I would put like kind of at the end of tier 3, just because she has the really good potential in some of her ramping ability and just spam, so that's good. Sanji has had a few weird like little showings here and there, so I'll put him in tier 3 probably towards the end here. This starter deck 14 Luffy is not really played over here in the East, so I really don't know, but I'm gonna put him just like at the end of tier 3 because he's a black deck that can do strong things and use Moria. I personally don't think this leader's super duper strong, but just because of how strong he's been showing in the West. I thought it would be probably unfair to put him out of the tier list, so I'll put him here just as like a little, like a nod. Uta, always like a generically strong green leader here, but just not good enough. Red Purple Kid has been showing up in some spicy situations. Foxy, I think, is like a weird copium leader. Red Green Odin, I think, actually can be very strong. Just not consistent enough, and definitely still struggles against stuff like Teach and some of these other leaders that you're probably still gonna end up hitting in a lot of tournaments. So for now, I'm just gonna put him, but I would rate him very highly in the Spice Copium list. And then Smoker, people have high hopes for him. There's some people that are cooking and that are holding out for him, and they think he's gonna be pretty good, but just for now, I think he goes into the Spice Copium ranking here. And yeah, these aren't really ordered. Honestly, even tier 3, I don't know if I would say this is like specifically super ordered, but this is just kind of what I'm feeling at the moment. All right, guys, this is it. As of right now, this is my thoughts on what the meta is. I don't think it's anything super crazy. I think we finally have some refinement to our list because our last one was very speculative. Again, if you just skipped here, I want to maybe just quickly mention a few things. I think Buggy with the new 7 cost will go up to tier 2. Teach could be 1.5, but I just don't think he's good enough. And Doffy beats him so hard that he probably stays on a tier 2. Currently, like literally as of this past week, I think Bonnie is just an incredibly good spot. That's why I'm putting her at tier 1.5, and I almost considered putting her at tier 1. Lucci, I think, is very strong and beats a lot of the top tier leaders, but can't tech against everyone, and it spreads him too thin, and he ends up still losing a bunch of matchups that in the past he might have been able to handle better. Red Purple Luffy, I just think gets outplayed by these two. Shanks, I do think has a little bit potential, and even though he's fallen off, I think he still has a lot of strength. And then Black Yellow Luffy, I think, has decent matchups into a lot of these other leaders, and with the threat of Teach being pretty minimal at the moment, I think Black Yellow Luffy, you're going to see him slowly start to creep up, as with Purple Black Luffy. I think Purple Black Luffy is going to start to creep up. Like, this is it. This is where I would have the tier list right now. If you ask me where I think things might end up towards the end, I don't know what the end of the meta is going to look like, but just towards the end, I would say these two might creep up. I think you might see something like this happen where Teach comes up, Lucci falls off, Black Purple Luffy comes up, and some of these other ones either creep up or fall off as well. But just for now, I think this is where I would keep everything. Yeah, maybe like this. Yeah. Okay, and then you got some sleeper picks like Hancock and Nami and stuff like Bella Betty, where if they just high roll, they can win 3-4 rounds in a row, which is good enough for like a flagship or a prelim qualifier. But I don't know if you could take Bella Betty to a CS regional right now and go 9 rounds in a row and win with her. Anel has too many bad matchups at the top, and then Vegapunk is Giga Chad and just really hard to pilot. But that's it. Those are my thoughts. Again, take everything with a grain of salt, please. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you're excited to play in OP9 when it comes out to the West, if you're in the West watching this. And just as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Consider checking out the other videos on my channel, checking out the Discord, follow me on Twitter, all that jazz. It's all really appreciated. But yeah, that's it for me. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.